Alrighty. Hello, everybody. This is All Who Wonder, a brand new monthly podcast hosted by yours truly, Anna Hudak. So, what is this for those who may not know? So, this is a series where I will be interviewing you, the fan. Whether it's science fiction and or fantasy, you don't need to be a huge expert in everything, I've got some people lined up for interviews who are only a fan of, one franchise in any of these genres. This is just about you. What brings you to these genres, and what makes you tick. So, today we have our very first guest. Thank you for being my guinea pig. And their name is M. This is not...
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Nice to have you. And by the way, I want to make sure, clear, people, this is not short, so that we're not getting, so people think, no, this is the letter M. This is not short for anything. We are just doing the letter M. Don't want to get to speculations or people writing EM or anything like that in comments or whatever.
No, it's just M, like the James Bond Q, but just the M.
Yeah. And, what are your pronouns?
They, them. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. And also, it's also nice that we did that, because I think it ensured that every MAGA chud just tuned out, so... Hopefully we won't have to deal with any, conservative harassment on this episode. Been doing a pretty good job of keeping away from them. So far. Anyway, so, who are you? What are some... Before we kind of get into the science fiction and the fantasy and all that stuff, what are some things that you are interested... that you think would be interesting for people to know about you outside of those?
Absolutely. So, I've always grown up being, into fantasy, sci-fi, any sort of fiction. I was a huge reader as a kid. When I got older, I started exploring more movies, TV shows. I actually came from a family where I wasn't really allowed to watch things as a young child, so a lot of my interaction with any sort of fantasy, sci-fi, any sort of online culture has been as a young adult.
Yeah.
I enjoy lots of different video games. I'm a little bit involved in the online gaming community. I mod for a Twitch channel or two, and it's always just been a huge part of who I am and what I enjoy. And I definitely have the ADHD and possibly autism combo, so I do a whole bunch of hyperfixations, deep dives, characterization, all that kind of stuff.
Nice. Yeah, that's honestly kind of somewhat similar to me. I'm going to be honest. I was not allowed to... I also grew up in a family where I was not allowed to get into a whole bunch of stuff growing up, but then as an adult, and my parents couldn't say no. I mean, I kind of snuck behind their back a little bit as a teen, but, mostly when I got...
Absolutely.
I would never become such a diehard Turtles fan or Star Trek fan, probably, if I had not... snuck behind their backs.
Yeah. Did you even grow up conservative if you didn't watch things behind your parents' back as a teenager? Is the real question.
I don't know if it's possible, and were you like me, where a lot of the stuff that you consumed was through not through some less than legal websites like Putlocker and all that stuff?
Sometimes I also had the whole divorced parents deluxe experience. So I had dad's Netflix password, and it was often mom's not home, we're not around, and we're watching Netflix on the laptop, baby.
Nice. I never got that myself. No, when I first got a job, I snuck some Netflix in behind my parents' back, and I watched Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and Iron Fist, all those. Definitely things that they found out a few years later about, and were not happy that I did behind her back. But
I mean, those are, to be fair, Daredevil especially. I love action. I love fights. But the Daredevil fights, those are some brutal fights, to be fair.
Yeah, especially in season 2, that Punisher fight scene get into prison.
Oh yeah.
That was even I could not watch that. I do not like gore.
I'm not a huge fan of gore, but I do love horror, so I'm okay with like moderate amounts of gore.
Yeah,
no, I think my I almost said drug of choice. That's not a good phrase, but my watching of choice behind my parents' back was definitely things along the lines of Criminal Minds and also Supernatural.
Nice.
And I think I was old enough to watch them. I was a teenager, but they definitely had no idea that my favorite show was Criminal Minds for a good portion of high school.
Yeah, if I had been caught watching something like Supernatural, which I never got into, I probably would have been out sleeping in the streets.
Yeah, I think my mom like once saw somebody wearing like a necklace that had like a supernatural. I think it was. I don't remember exactly. It was some kind of like thing from the show, and was like, "Oh, what is that demonic symbol?" And this was a family friend, so I was kind of trying to defend them without it being known that I knew exactly what this symbol was.
Oh,
so
I understand that.
I mean, I think I've heard of a TV show that it might be from, and meanwhile I'm like binge watching this entire series. And, you know, your siblings were probably older, so this didn't happen to you, but I had like a lot of young siblings at the time, and I definitely had a couple times where I was like babysitting, and my 3-year-old sister would come sit on my lap and just watch Supernatural, and she would just kind of stare at the screen and like did not care. It was just like, okay.
Polluting them while they're young. I see how this is. Leading them astray from the good path, from the good holy path.
Of course. It's what I do best.
We're gonna grow up to be metalheads, and you know, smoking marijuana. You know,
not the weed.
Yeah, no. My siblings when I was doing this were all like in for double digits. So I didn't have to quite worry so much about that. But yeah.
Yes.
I think
we want to say how you and I met or how we know each other, because I think it's a funny thing to do with siblings.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I actually don't remember, so you can say.
Okay, so I was roommates with Anna's sibling for 2 years, 2.5 in college, and we still talk. And I actually talked to your youngest sister as well. So. I like somehow know all of your family, although we didn't really start talking until after. I think I saw you maybe once when you were like helping your sister move into the dorm. Yeah. And then we kind of like connected online.
Yeah. Okay, I knew that you went to my sister's college. I just didn't remember the other details at all.
Yep.
So yeah, we do know each other, and to be honest, that's probably why I wanted to start with M here, because, well, somebody I know, I at least somewhat know. I feel comfortable using them as my special little guinea pig.
I'm not as intimidating.
Because, frankly, I don't know pretty much anybody else who's on my interview list, so I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of them in case this turned out to be a bit of a mess starting off, so...
Doing great.
Thanks. Anyway, I guess we might as well get into what everybody's actually all here for. So, I guess the first thing we want to know is, let's start from as far back as you can remember. What are some of your earliest memories with either science fiction and or fantasy?
Yeah, so I think I touched a little bit on, obviously sneaking things behind my parents' back as a teenager, and that would have been probably Supernatural was the gateway show, if you will. Mm-hmm. But if we want to go back further than that, I actually was homeschooled, if you couldn't tell from our already talking about family backgrounds, and I did not start reading until maybe 2nd grade, which is, a little late for a kid to start reading. So my mom just decided to let me read anything and everything that I would put my hands on. And that mostly ended up being like fantasy and fiction and sci-fi type stuff. So I think definitely what got me into it was the reading. I was allowed to read Chronicles of Narnia. I was not allowed to read Lord of the Rings, oddly enough, because most parents will let their kids read that. I was not allowed to read that. So just starting out mainly with like Chronicles of Narnia and like any sort of fantasy sci-fi book I could get my hands on before I was allowed to watch TV. And then when I was allowed to watch TV, or I started watching it with my dad at my dad's place, it started out pretty much with Supernatural and with Star Wars. Star Wars and Supernatural, I think, were like my big gateway fandoms. That and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm obsessed with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's been like a lifelong special interest. And it started out with my dad actually showing me the live-action movies from like the 90s.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. So I honestly, if I remember correctly, I was very, very young, like maybe 8 years old, and my dad was like scrolling through channels to let me watch something before bed and was like, oh, here, I watched these as a kid. I think you'd like them. Here you go. So, not as a kid. My dad wasn't a kid in the 90s, obviously. But he knew Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and he was like, here you go, watch this. So, to this day, my gateway into like a lifelong obsession was the movies where they're wearing the like mildly disturbing costumes and doing all these quips that they're not even lip synced to. But peak, it was great. Love it.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I mean, I have a lifelong obsession with Turtles as well. It was one of the very first franchises that was ever presented to me as a kid. Like, I knew Star Wars and all that stuff, like, I was, I was born, I think the year Phantom Menace came out, because when did Phantom Menace come out? Was that 98, 99? Let me look that up.
Yeah, I think it was.
Phantom
and that would make sense, because I know it was before I was born. And
yeah, so Phantom Menace came out in 99, I was born in 98, and I remember when Star Wars 3 came out. I remember when the Toledo Museum of Art, because I grew up in Toledo, Ohio area, had a exhibit for Star Wars stuff. My dad used to have like a bunch of Star Wars Legos. He had like this DK encyclopedia of old sets and pieces of Phantom Menace. Like, and I even had a few toys, but like they actually did not allow me to actually watch or even read anything Star Wars back then. So like, all I really knew was like, hey, there's Yoda, there's Padme, there's Jar Jar Binks, but like I didn't know what any of them sounded like, what any of them did, or really any of that. So the first franchise I actually got into, like that they allowed us to be a part of, was Turtles. And we played Turtles video games growing up. Specifically
very similar to my siblings and I would play like the Star Wars Lego games. Ooh. So it sounds like pretty similar there with the starting out with little games.
Yeah. And we had a one for the 2003 Turtle series called Teenage Mutant Turtles 2 Battle Nexus, and it had an unlockable arcade game. I want to say, I forget which one it was, but that was how I first got into Turtles, and I had all the toys, coloring books, and so yeah, that was my start of my obsession with that. So nice to, I mean, we didn't get into it the same way, but it's kind of cool that we both have that like lifelong thing. I remember from early on that, like,
Absolutely. Are you familiar, let me ask you this, are you familiar with the 2018 reboot, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and what's your opinion? Because I recently just came off a hyperfixation on that lasted about a month and a half. So I haven't been watching it like recently, but about a month ago I was hyperfixated hard.
It's not for me. Like, I recognize why people love it. My problem is it's just not my style of humor.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like the animation is fantastic. Like, it's probably got the best animation I've probably seen in a cartoon. And I loved the voice acting. I felt like a lot of the story building was very well done. In fact, I actually liked a lot of the things that they did with the characters, like have Ralph start off as the leader, and also like how they had like completely different designs for each of the turtles, like for all like different types of turtles and everything. But it really just wasn't my type of humor, so I personally didn't enjoy it too much. But like, I really do understand why so many people love that series, and I kind of feel upset that for all of the fans that the show's just kind of been shafted.
I agree with you. The humor is definitely aimed at younger kids a little bit, and at first I wasn't sure if I would even be into the show because it is more lighthearted. It's definitely like a more lighthearted take on the franchise as a whole. But I got into it, I think, because of all the other aspects you talked about. Like, they all have different designs. And for me, found family or, like, unconventional family has always been a trope that I will just die for every single time. So you have, like, obviously unconventional turtle plus rat family.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked how they did different designs for each of the turtles and gave it like meaning, and okay, we're actually going to work with these, like, Michelangelo's really small, we're going to make him so he's like really bouncy, and we'll just like go inside his shell and they can throw him like a projectile. You know, they actually worked with the designs to give them all different personalities. I really, really liked the characterization in that series. I think is why it's one of my top Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, because they really delved into characterization. They really gave everyone a different personality. And I have always been a sucker for Raph, has always been one of my favorites.
Preach!
And I feel like they actually gave him the personality and the character development that he deserved, so that he's not just the angry one type of deal. Which, oddly enough, I feel like he started out as, in the 90s series, like, oh, okay, he has anger issues, but he's more than just that. And then in some of the recent, like maybe the 2012 series, kind of devolved a little bit into, like, just the hothead. So, honestly, seeing him, like, step up and lead as the big brother in this series was very cool, and took the pressure off Leonardo's character to be only the leader. So you could actually explore, like, okay, who is Leonardo if he's not the leader? And I could talk for hours about how they canonically wrote Donatello as autistic in this series. I mean, everybody, I feel like even back in the 2012 series, people were like, oh, Donatello's autistic, but it was kind of a fan theory. And seeing that representation, especially because, like, I'm very likely autistic, and just seeing the representation in a character and done so well, because he's a bit of a stereotype, but they did the stereotype correctly. The autism, the neurodivergence is never like something that makes him just get pushed aside. It's very much a part of his character, and it shows up in almost every aspect of what he does, but it's just seen as like, this is just Donatello, this is just Donnie, this is just how he is. And it's very refreshing, honestly, because in some other shows that try and write neurodivergent or autistic characters, even in, like, trying to think of an example, so, like, She-Ra recently had a character that was supposed to be autistic, and I think there's a scene where I've actually never watched all of She-Ra, so forgive me, diehard She-Ra fans, if I'm getting this wrong.
Alright, She-Ra Mafia, listen closely so you know who to harass.
Oh, no. No, I think there's a scene where they're, like, running from some imminent danger, and she's, like, so distracted by her technology that they literally put, like, a leash around this grown adult.
Ouch.
And, like, run away from the danger, pulling her by this leash. And that was just so weird to see, as, like, that's supposed to be your autism representation, is the techie nerd who's only useful to the group through the tech and then is a hazard otherwise. Whereas in the 2018 Rise, you see Donatello being, yeah, he is like an asset to the group through tech, but also more than that. And they actually have a couple episodes where they center on the fact that he's more than that. Plus, he's very kind of stereotypically autistic, and like he's not very expressive. He doesn't really initiate physical contact, like just little things like that. But it's never seen as something bad. It's like, this is just Donnie, and we accept Donnie, and this is just what he's like. So
Nice.
That was, I think, fantastic representation going there. And yeah, I really like Rise for a lot of those reasons. And honestly, like, if you liked the animation and all those different aspects of the Turtles, I'd encourage you to watch the movie that recently came out.
Oh,
even
yeah.
if you're not like a huge fan of the humor, because the movie is fantastic. And the movie also gets pretty deep and a little bit like serious, because they engage in some mortal peril with the Krang and whatnot, as they usually do. But it was an excellent movie. So even though the series got kind of cut short there, I think the movie, even if the series doesn't end up like coming back, the movie was a great way to kind of pick up and be like, okay, let's kind of follow up and give it a little bit of closure.
Nice. Yeah, I have not seen the movie yet. I've heard good things about it, but for also the only people I really heard that from were people who already, like, adored everything about the series, who thought it was the greatest thing ever. So it's like, I don't know if I really trust your judgment, because you're going to like it anyway, but that gives me a bit more confidence to check it out. I'll definitely have to give that one a try.
That's fair. I think what happened is I watched like the beginning of the series, what's on Netflix right now, which is, I think, like maybe the first season.
Yeah.
And then I watched the movie because that's what I had access to. And then I went back because I was obsessed, and I watched the rest of the series through somewhat illegal means. But so I
hey, you know what? I'm a fully grown adult, and I still do that, so it's perfectly fine.
Oh, yeah. You know what? What are you supposed to do?
I'm not signing up for like 10 different streaming services.
I was somewhat introduced to the series before I watched the movie, but I was not fully obsessed yet. So it's a good movie, and even if you haven't seen the full 3 seasons, I think it's 2 or 3 seasons. I don't know, because I watched it all at once. But even if you haven't seen the full show, you can pretty much pick up on it. It's pretty easy to pick up on the storyline.
That's good. I've only seen the first season, so
okay.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that one out. Let me see. Alright, I feel like we've probably... I would love to talk some more Turtles, like, seriously, like, I love it so much. But we also... There's a lot of other things you've listed here. We're probably not going to get to all of it. I feel like we probably should keep moving on to be respectful of your time, unless you have all the time in the world, which I'm pretty certain you don't.
I don't. Everybody who doesn't like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has already left this podcast.
All right.
Like, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into?
Yeah, once again, I would love to sit around and talk about that, but I feel like we need to probably, unfortunately, move on from talking about that. So, the other franchise that you mentioned that you got into pretty early was Star Wars. What do you remember? What was it that you watched first, or what was it that you enjoyed about it as a kid? Like, you know, or did you not even enjoy it at first and only became a fan of it later and all that stuff?
Yeah, so I think I remember I once again was like not allowed to watch Star Wars when I was young, and then when I got a tiny bit older and was like aware of Star Wars' existence, I went to my dad, who did allow me to watch things, and was like, "Dad, I want to watch Star Wars." And my dad was like, "Sure, you know," but he insisted that I watch it in the correct order, which is release order. So I watched the original trilogy first, and then went back and watched the prequels, and then continued on. So that was the first bit that I watched, and then actually when I was younger, I watched Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which was the animated series.
Which one? The Cartoon Network one, or the traditional animated one?
I think that was the Cartoon Network one.
Okay, so the CGI one. Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure.
I don't remember what year that came out.
Yeah, it came out a few years later, but if it was CGI and like had like 3D animation, that's the Cartoon Network one. Because there was two of them. A lot of people. There was the traditional 2D one that came out like that was like one season, and I know that there's going to be some Star Wars nerds who are going to be like, but which one? You didn't clarify which one. This means nothing to me now.
Oh, no. No, I think the Clone Wars... Here, I'll clarify for you. It's the one that you can find now on Disney+. Except you can probably find them both. I don't know.
I have no idea. My family has Disney+, but I don't ever browse it myself.
Okay.
Like, literally,
no.
Pretty much I only ever watch what the only things I really ever used it for was to watch DuckTales with Mom. The new one. We're watching Andor as with my parents, and we're going to be watching Disenchanted when that comes out. So like, I really don't use Disney Plus myself.
Phases. I go through phases where I sometimes watch Disney Plus and I sometimes don't. But no, I was obsessed with Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and it is. I don't know if you've ever seen that series.
I have not.
It's really intense for supposedly being a kid's show.
Hey, you know,
and because it's basically the story. I mean, it is the story of the Clone Wars, obviously by the name. So it does not end well. It does not have a happy ending. It does not. And honestly, the Dave over here directing was just kind of like, I literally saw a meme this morning that was like the director just being like, today's subject, slavery, because it's honestly like that. Like, you settle in to just watch an innocent episode and it'll be an episode about how like the ethics of the Republic using clone troopers when clone troopers are living, breathing people, and the Empire's using drones and droids. Sorry. Oh my goodness, the Star Wars people are going to attack me now.
Remember, it's her saying it, not me.
Yep, no. But it really gets into like the ethics and the morality and maybe the Republic isn't all it's cracked up to be and all these different things. And honestly, here you can tell I'm a nerd because I have a list in the Notes app on my phone that has been there for years. And it's a list of cartoon series I want my future children to watch.
Oh. Are you comfortable with reading any of those?
Oh, yeah, let me find it. But I will tell you right now, Star Wars: The Clone Wars is on there.
Nice.
Because it's just an excellent show.
Nice. Yeah. You know, the thing with like kid friend, like it's supposed to be a kid's show, but it's like secretly dark. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003 is actually the exact same way. I'm actually glad my parents would not let me watch that show as a kid, despite the fact I wanted to.
I was honestly one of the children who I was a great kid, but also if I wanted to do something, you really couldn't make me not do it. So once I had access to the internet, it was all over for my parents.
Well, yeah, same here. But, like, I actually wasn't, like, didn't have, like, because, like, previously, like, pretty much all the computer access I had was on, like, my parents' computer, so I couldn't get away with that stuff. But once I had my own, when I was a teenager, then I went off and watched the series, and it's like, yeah, I'm glad my parents wouldn't let me watch this on TV when I was a kid, because this is messing me up now as an adult, as a, 17, 16-year-old.
Yeah, I had the hack of divorced parents, so I think my dad gave me a Kindle when I was like 8 years old to read books on, and I did read a lot of books on there, but I also could access the internet. And I think my mom tried to put parental controls on it once, and I simply was like, Dad, Mom put parental controls on my Kindle, and Dad was like, that's not fair, I'm your parent too, and basically, I exploited the conflict. It worked great.
Hey, you might as well.
Yeah, you know what? You got the divorced parents. Go for it.
Yeah.
That's my advice to any kids of divorced parents out there. No, don't take my advice. I'm terrible at advice. But anyway, yes, my list of TV series that I want my kids to watch is not very long. It's just Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, which is kind of a continuation of the same universe. It has some of the same characters reoccurring.
Mm-hmm.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Which
obviously. We've discussed this at length.
Which one?
And Lego Ninjago Masters of Spinjitzu.
Ooh, all right. Well, let's talk about that one.
We can. That one is one where actually I was alarmingly older when I got into that. I was probably in like my later years of high school when it even came out. I'm not even sure. But I was, for some reason, it was a hyperfixation is what it was. My brain saw it and went dopamine chase. And so I just got fully obsessed with it. And definitely one that I still will just go back and watch for nostalgia purposes today.
Nice. Yeah, I've not seen any of the shows myself. I know of Ninjitsu TV shows. I didn't really have many friends growing up, but pretty much the ones I did have growing up loved Ninjago. They absolutely adored it with every fiber of their beings. So I've definitely heard a lot about it. I have the most experience I really have with Ninjago are having owned some of the sets when that first came out and having watched the movie.
Yeah, I was... Oh, not the movie. Oh my god, not the movie. No! Okay.
I specifically mentioned the movie so I could hear your reaction to that.
Oh, not the movie! No! Okay. I remember being in high school when the movie came out and was with another friend who was also a fan of the show. And we were like playing around in somebody else's house and we found a DVD of Lego Ninjago, the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And we both were like, burn it, shoot it, destroy it, like, get it out of here. Absolutely not. I honestly think that everybody had such a strong reaction to the movie because they changed the character design, they changed the voice actors, they changed a lot of aspects of the story, like character ages, character backstory, etc., etc. They basically kind of just pulled the characters out of the universe they were from and plopped them down in the same universe. And don't get me wrong, I love the original Lego movie, I love the Lego Batman movie, I love the vibe of Lego movies in general.
Mm-hmm.
But Lego Ninjago, absolutely not. It's blasphemy, it's a mockery, can't deal with it to this day.
That's my reaction to Teen Titans Go as a diehard fan of the original series.
Oh god, not Teen Titans Go. Yes, no, I was also a diehard fan of Teen Titans, and it was one of those shows that like got really intense for a kid series, I think.
Yeah, oh hell yeah.
And then suddenly, oh yeah, and then Teen Titans Go appeared, and I remember sitting there with my sister, actually, because she also enjoyed Teen Titans, and we were sitting there kind of looking at, like, watching Teen Titans Go on a Saturday morning in our house, just staring at it like, what has become of the world?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I totally feel that. I remember watching that show, and it's just like, this isn't Teen Titans. What is this?
This is not...
So we canceled...
No, I think... Yeah, like, there are ways to do a good reboot, or even a good, like, spin-off series, but that's not it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a good spin-off series is something like The Jeffersons, which was spin-off of All in the Family. It had the same, like, you know, it felt like the same characters, you know, you could tell this was the same world. This was not it. I have no idea what they were doing, and especially to make it worse is that the original, I don't know if they're still around, but, like, for writers and the directors, none of them had ever watched the original series that they were spinning off of. And so they just grew to despise the fans of the original series. Like, they even made an episode called Slade Returns, where Slade did not return, made specifically despite the fans of the original series.
No, I think definitely, and I know you mentioned you haven't seen the Star Wars, like the animated shows, but for me, that was where, like, Star Wars Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels was actually a good follow-up from Clone Wars, even though it was a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more geared toward kids, because it had the same characters, it was in the same universe. And then when Disney kind of absorbed Lucasfilms and made all of the animated series canon, they, I think, added that, like, they wanted to keep it within the same universe and create a larger... So, interestingly enough, that, like, you know, I'm not sure what they even call them, like, the Star Wars one-off movies, like Rogue One?
Yeah, anthology, the anthology series.
Okay, yeah. So...
At least that's the name they were going with at the time. Don't know if they still call it that.
Yeah, so because Disney absorbed Lucasfilm and they wanted to kind of continue that, like, universe they were making with the animated series, you can find, like, mentions to and even characters from the animated series in, like, Rogue One, for example. Like there is at least a couple scenes in Rogue One where you meet a character or they mention a character that originated from the animated series. So if you've watched the animated series, you see that and you go, oh my goodness, that's the general that we met in Clone Wars. Nice.
Yeah, I can't say I picked up on any of those. Like, I know that Saw Gerrera, I guess, was in one of the animated shows. Mm-hmm. Because, like, every freaking article about Rogue One at the time could not stop freaking out about how Saw Gerrera was in the movie.
Yes.
But, like, I did not know there were other callbacks or references to the other shows. That was the only one pretty much any article mentioned because everyone was freaking out about it.
I think he was the one that was the most obvious and the biggest role, but I think there were a couple of things, like they announced the name of a general over a loudspeaker in one scene, like in the background, like, General whoever, can you please come to wherever? And it's the name of a general from a series. Mm-hmm. Or, like, there's a droid that's from the series. Stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah, I never would have picked up on those, and I'll probably have to look into those to find out what those are now. It's kind of piqued my interest.
Yeah, the Easter eggs. I have not watched The Bad Batch. But the characters from The Bad Batch, I know, actually originate also in Clone Wars, in the animated series. So I am interested in watching that. I need to watch it because you meet the characters in that series, and they're actually very fun characters. So, because Clone Wars did face an interesting challenge in how do you make all these clones who are literally voiced by the same voice actor and look exactly the same into distinct individualized personalities.
Yeah, that seems a bit of a problem.
Yeah, in order to humanize them for the audience, because Clone Wars does center a lot around humanizing the clone troopers, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So the Bad Batch, it was a little obvious because everybody had, like, very distinct features and such. I think in, like, Clone Wars in general, more of the squads would just have, like, little designs on their uniform or something so that you could kind of tell them apart. But I am interested to see what they do with that.
Yeah, I know that there was somebody that I knew who got into that show. My main memory of that show, I've not seen it, was Mom and I were going to go watch DuckTales one night when it came out, and it was like the first thing there on Disney Plus splash page, you know? Mom's like, why is Disney releasing a show called Bad Bitch?
Oh, good.
Mom literally thought it said Bad Bitch, and I just died.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
It's like, that does not seem like Disney.
Say fun things like that, yeah.
Alright,
That's an interesting, because I know you mentioned that, like, your dad had Star Wars Lego sets. Mm-hmm. Do you think your parents were into, like, fantasy and sci-fi at all, or not really?
Oh, my parents are, especially my dad. My dad was a huge nerd growing up. And I think my mom kind of got dragged into it after she married Dad.
Okay, yeah, because my dad, it was weird because you wouldn't know he was a nerd. He doesn't really, like, have any of the, like, any merch or any memorabilia or anything. But the minute that I showed interest in, like, Star Wars and Marvel and stuff, he, like, suddenly, like, reawoke his nerdy side, and now he has some stuff because, like, my siblings and I will, like, give him Darth Vader Christmas ornaments and stuff like that. But
Nice.
It was interesting how, like, I never would have guessed my dad was a Star Wars fan until I was like, hey, Dad, I want to watch Star Wars. Have you ever seen Star Wars? And he was like, absolutely, but you can only watch them in the proper order, the way George Lucas intended for them to be watched. And I was like, okay. So...
Yeah, my dad got us to watch that way.
Yeah, I think that was just cool that, like, it was something that my dad wasn't, like, it didn't really show up in his life until his kids were interested in it, and then it was like, oh, I'm interested in this again.
Yeah, my dad, when I was a kid, had, like, a bunch of merchandise, but as we got older, he started getting rid of more and more of it. Like, he had this huge wall of, like, Battletech robots and, like, Gundam and stuff like that. But then as we got older, he started getting rid of that stuff more. And now, if you were to come to our place today or get to know him today, you would never guess it. You literally would never guess it.
I've met your father. I wouldn't have guessed it, no.
Yeah, but, like, when we were kids, he had, like, so much nerdy stuff. Like, his entire den was just a nerd, like, a nerd altar or whatever. Like... He was a much different person back then.
Yeah.
Alright, so... What got you into Harry Potter? Because somebody tells me that probably was something that you were not allowed to get into as a kid. What's your history with that?
Yeah, so I have to preface anything Harry Potter with fuck J.K. Rowling. Daniel Radcliffe wrote the books, we all know this. And that's all I really have to say about that, I think. But Harry Potter was something I was always, like, super curious about, like, looking from the outside in, and was not allowed to get into at all because, like, this is witchcraft, blah, blah, blah. And then when I was a little bit older, maybe my first year of college or so, I literally bought myself the full, like, actual physical hardcover copies of the books and had them, and I think I, like, hid them in my closet at one point because they were, like, not allowed in the house. But ever since I was allowed to read them and watch the movies, or not allowed, but I just did it anyway, I have just been obsessed. It's a really cool fantasy world. There's some great world building in there. Proud Slytherin on that. Definitely. And I actually, like, interact with it on kind of a daily basis now because I work very close to the Universal theme park. I work for a company that has a partnership with them. So definitely, like, see a lot of people going to the theme parks every day and just, like, wearing the merch and stuff like that.
That would definitely make sense. So there's definitely a question I want to ask because something that you mentioned, because I am somebody who has never read the books, never seen the movies. I actually was going to read the books for the first time, so during COVID lockdowns, like, I was made up my mind, like, you know what, just check out what these books are, you know, because everybody's talking about them, and I worked at a library at that time, and all my coworkers were just like, you work at a library, you have to read Harry Potter. And then literally that day, as I was about to, like, when I was like, okay, made up my mind, I'm going to check this book out from Hoopla, JKR made those tweets. Literally the day I was going to start reading, so never got into that. But the question I was going to ask is, explain to folks like me who have never read Harry Potter, what does Slytherin mean, since you're so proud of that?
Slytherin, yes. So, in the Harry Potter books, just like a quick introduction if you don't know, the school Hogwarts runs on a house system, where you get sorted into one of 4 houses. You have Slytherin, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff. Do I think that this is necessarily a good way for the school to work? Probably not, because they do it very wrong, and they end up like pitting the kids against each other to like earn house points and win the house cup at the end of the year, and that leads to a lot of rivalry between houses. And also in the books, the houses have kind of turned into like more of a blood proud thing, where you have like wizard Nazis who are in Slytherin, who are like, oh, my family has always been in Slytherin, we will always be in Slytherin, we're the pure house or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, it gets a little intense. But at the core, it's just like your personality traits, plus what you value as a person. So the Gryffindor is like the house of the loyal and the brave.
Okay.
Slytherin is like house of the ambitious and the cunning. Ravenclaw is like the house of like wisdom and learning. And Hufflepuff is like kindness and loyalty to friends.
Okay.
And you could honestly, I've had so many conversations with your sister, because she is a Hufflepuff and I'm a Slytherin. And fun fact, when we text each other, we send each other hearts with the corresponding house color every time we finish a conversation.
Oh, wow.
Just because it's just a fun little thing we do. But we both, so your sister and I both really value like knowledge and learning.
Mm-hmm.
So at first glance, we both would probably be Ravenclaw, but we value other things more, if that makes sense.
Yes, no, I understand that.
Yeah, so it's especially because the core trio of like Harry Potter, Hermione, and Ron from the books are technically stereotypes, so they should be in the other houses. So Hermione's really smart, she loves learning, she should be Ravenclaw, but she's Gryffindor. Ron is like very loyal and kind, should be Hufflepuff, but he's Gryffindor. And Harry, there's actually a scene where he almost gets sorted into Slytherin, and then he basically is like, no, I don't want to, and they're like, oh, fair enough, Gryffindor.
Wow.
So the houses was just one of the things. I think the biggest reason that I like the Harry Potter series is just the world building that goes on in it. And the house system is definitely one of the cool things in that I just really enjoy.
Nice. So that's actually going to lead into one of the final things that I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned when we were talking before this that you like to deep dive lore and characterization. What is it about lore or characterization or whatever? Like, what was like the first thing that you can remember getting really diving like that into, and why?
Thing I can remember really deep diving into like lore and characterization would be like the first big fantasy thing I was into, which was Chronicles of Narnia.
Nice.
Because if you remember from Chronicles of Narnia, once you get into the later books, Susan actually leaves Narnia, like stops believing.
Yes, I remember that.
In the very last book, The Final Battle.
Yeah.
And also, of course, in like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you have Edmund kind of betraying his siblings to go with the White Witch.
Yeah.
And I was just, even as a child, I was fascinated by those characters making, like, bad decisions, but they're not necessarily bad characters.
Yeah.
And I was going, oh my goodness, this is so interesting because this is a touch realistic. You know, good people sometimes make bad decisions, and you don't always get your happy ending, and just stuff like that. And so now, as an adult, I feel like with any piece of media that I watch, I tend to like deep dive a character's motives. And then you have, you know, the typical, oh, the villain is always queer coded, so I always identify with the villain. So there's a ton going on with like any piece of media that I watch, like Marvel especially, anything that I end up watching, there's always a character or two that I always just get, like, really very interested in and really want to, like, pick apart. their motives and how their brain works and just everything about them.
What's the most recent character that you've been really deep diving into lately?
It's not going to be anything from any of these fandoms.
That's fine. Just who is it?
Are you familiar at all with the creators who do the Dream SMP?
Dream Recipe?
The Dream SMP, the Minecraft roleplay survival multiplayer.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah. So I'm not actually like super into the Dream SMP, but I do like watch a lore stream occasionally because they actually did like a very good job with the lore and they get really into it. And there are a couple of creators who have chosen to make their character like an anti-hero or a character with very complex motives. So this particular content creator is called Awesome Dude, and his character on the Dream SMP is like a very complex character who sometimes he is like really good and doing very great things and helping people who need help and taking a lot of responsibility on himself with things that nobody else wants to do. And then other times there was a lore stream where and this is all I have to preface because it gets weird when you're working with like the actual people. This is all the characters. None of this is the actual content creators.
Okay.
But there's a character on the SMP that he was like in love with. Like their storyline was that they were Valentines and everything. And then this character stole something from Awesome Dude's character.
Oh.
And he proceeded to hunt him down and torture him until he gave it back and actually cut off his arm.
Oh. Oh, wow. That got dark pretty quick.
Yes. And there was more behind it. It was like supposedly there was a lot at stake, you know, but it's very cool to watch a character like that where you are not sure ever if you like the character or not. You're like, is this a good character? Is this a bad character? It really boils down to, you know, do the ends justify the means? And you have to kind of acknowledge, because personally for me, from a person who comes from a place of like having experienced abuse and trauma in my life, when that lore stream happened, I was like, okay, I can't. This character is no longer a good character in my eyes because nothing justifies abuse.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Then you're looking to like all the later streams, and then later that same character who got his arm cut off like takes revenge and murders the character back. So like it's just, it gets very, anything that's complicated. I like when you have characters that are not black and white.
Yeah.
Because we as people want characters to be black and white because we want to have a clear expectation of who we're supposed to root for.
Yep.
And I think it's very cool to see media that is not afraid to make characters gray, because real life is seldom ever black and white. So that's very interesting to me.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. You know, I've been, I know that some people who've been following me on Twitter know this, but I know probably a lot who are listening don't, but I have been writing my own fantasy books, and that's definitely been a challenge for me, something to try to challenging myself to break out of making this character, this, shiny, just like shiny paragon of all things goodness, because it's very easy to do that when you're writing a hero, so I mean, I'm going to kind of give a little bit of a spoiler of my book now. I mean, it's going to be years before this even comes out, so everybody's going to forget about this long before it comes out. Yes, you're all getting exclusive
spoilers, everyone.
There's even a question where you can debate on whether this person even is a hero or not. Like, I am personally, like, because what I'm trying to do is like set up like all these prophecies and all this stuff, and then you read about this character and their journey and everything, and it's just like, were they really the hero? Were they really that one that we were all prophesied and all looking forward to? I'm not really sure. And I at least hope that's what people come away with, is questioning whether if they really were that person or not.
That could be seen as a hero or a villain depending on what side you're on.
Yeah, or just...
I think that's always really cool.
Or even just, did they even fulfill the prophecies, is another one I want to really address, because, I think that, you see so often with these fantasy stories, you have the prophecies, and there's, like, that prophesied hero, and they come in, and they fulfill all of these prophecies, with, pretty easily, and everybody just immediately accepts them as the hero, like, hey, you fulfilled this, this thing. Well, what if you have a hero where, I guess technically they may have fulfilled it, but did they really?
Can't wait to have your book come out, and then I'll find out exactly what this spoiler relates to.
Yeah, so, but yeah, that's something I've definitely been trying to kind of challenge myself with. But anyway, let's move on. I think that we need to probably start wrapping up soon. So I got 2 more questions. So the first of the 2 questions is, you mentioned that you are a pretty big anime fan.
Yep.
I am not an anime fan. I'm just going to be straight up. I'm not really somebody who ever really got into it. I don't know. Maybe I just never have found the one for me. I did enjoy Patsuma Inverted, and like, there was one Studio Ghibli film. I like Nausicaa, and there was the Secret World of Arrietty, but oh, and there was the Craven of Fireflies and Wind Rises, but yeah, I liked those, but never really got into all the other ones, including the ones my sisters got watched and made me watch with them and all that stuff. But you said specifically,
your sister has made me watch certain ones as well.
Yeah. You know that then.
Yes.
You mentioned...
Actually, your sister and I have very different taste in anime, so it would be very interesting sometime to compare it.
Nice. That definitely is different. So the 2 that you mentioned to me are Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but I'm going to try anyway. Anime heads... Go ahead. I already know you're going to spam my inbox with calling me an idiot and all that stuff. Go ahead, whatever.
Oh no.
I'm used to it. I'm used to it at this point. Owari no Seraph.
Yay! That's my best guess.
Oh, okay. So
I think the English name is Seraph of the End.
Okay.
I probably should have given you the English name to begin with, but.
All right. So. Let's dig into the first one you mentioned, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Yes. When did you get into that? What made you love it?
Okay, so Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, probably my top favorite anime of all time if I had to pick one. I know for a fact that your sister has or had a t-shirt for it, so I know she likes this one too.
She does.
It is...
She wears it every time she's over.
Yeah, it's a pretty typical, like, young adult male protagonist type anime.
Mm-hmm.
But it focuses on a pair of siblings, which I love because I love the, sibling dynamic. I think you could probably call it, fantasy or sci-fi because it focuses on them doing alchemy, but it's magic alchemy, so they draw some things and move their hands around and they can transmutate objects. It's like futuristic fantasy, or a lot of people would call that science fiction. I've seen a lot of people label that science fiction, like Star Wars. Star Wars is, if you kind of think about it, is a bit more probably fantasy with the Force and shiny glowing swords, lightsabers, and all that stuff, but counts as science fiction. So yeah, I think it's kind of in that niche where it's science fiction, but it looks like magic from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets very, very intense. I think they're one of them kind of graphically loses an arm and a leg in the second episode.
Oh my.
So
just introducing you to the world like Game of Thrones did, with Ned Stark getting beheaded at the end of the first episode.
I mean, there you go. No, it's basically
I've never watched Game of Thrones, by the way.
Me neither. Me neither.
I just know that happens in the first episode.
Yeah, so basically what you need to know is, in this world of, like, transmutation, which a lot of people do, so it's like a profession, you can be an alchemist.
Okay.
The one thing you're never supposed to do is try to bring someone back from the dead.
Ooh.
Because
necromancy.
Transmutation requires, like, an equal and opposite matter exchange, and you cannot measure the worth of a human soul, is the big deal.
Ooh, yeah.
So, yeah, of course it starts out with these kids who are quite young, and they lose their mother, and of course they decide, we're gonna do human transmutation.
Ouch.
And it does not go well for them, because one of them loses their entire body.
Oh.
So he's just a suit of armor.
Ooh.
Like, attached to his consciousness, basically.
Oh, like Doom Patrol.
For the entire show, pretty much. And the other one loses an arm and a leg, so he has basically like a prosthetic arm and leg.
Ooh. Well, that sounds
but it's very interesting. It's very complex. It's, you laugh, you cry, that kind of show.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely one of my all-time favorite animes. And it is, I will just say, go watch it. It's very cool.
All right. And then, what about Owari no Seraph? What's that? And what got you into it?
So, Seraph of the End is a little bit less well-known, I'd want to say. Like, watch all the weebs come after me being like, oh, that's a noob anime. I don't know. But it was
okay, Full Metal Alchemist is considered a noob anime from people on Twitter I've seen.
Oh, yeah. No, it is. But it is simultaneously about demons and vampires.
Okay.
So, typical anime stuff, every magical being we can into this one show. But it is about, like, a ragtag group of kids who are going around, but they are also trained assassins, and they use weapons that are demon-possessed.
Oh.
Because they are fighting vampires, and then there's an accident, and basically one of them ends up being a vampire, so it's the one versus who is like a demon soldier versus a vampire, but they also love each other and they're brothers and like blah blah blah. Oh. It's very good. Actually, the reason I like it is because it has like very well defined characterization also, and they also do that with their female characters as well. Because in anime, unfortunately, I feel like the female characters often get reduced to all the same, like a slightly different font of the same character.
Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge anime fan, and I know what you're talking about.
Yes. So, and this anime actually has female characters who are distinct and different and well written, and it is just overall pretty great. I think it is not even like, I know the manga has more. I think the show didn't even finish because it ends on a cliffhanger. But it's really fun and just one of the ones that I also really enjoy. Nice.
All right. And so we're going to move on to the final questions. We can let you go on with your day. Plus, I actually have something I've got to get to myself in just a little bit. And that is, I want to try to end these episodes as much as possible with just one thing that the guest thinks that more people should know about. And so what is it that what is that one thing that you love at science fiction or fantasy that you think that more people should know more about or get into more?
Yeah, I think for this one I have to bring up Helluva Boss, and it is spelled like HELLUV. Wait. Oh, yeah, A. Yes, okay, that's spelled. Thank you. Helluva.
I'll put it. I'll try to remember to put it in the show notes.
Okay, yes. And it is made by the same creator. If you haven't heard of Helluva Boss, you've maybe heard of Has Been Hotel. So if anybody out there has heard of Has Been Hotel, it's the same creator. I believe you pronounce it Vivzy Pop.
Oh.
And yeah, Vivzy Pop, the creator on YouTube.
Okay.
She is amazing. She does some really great stuff. Helluva Boss is, imagine like an adult animated dark comedy.
Oh.
So if you like cartoons, but you're also an adult and you're fine with adult content, dark comedy, cartoony gore type of stuff going on, it's really fun. It's just a riot. And it's about a bunch of imps in hell and also some demons thrown in for good measure.
I'm sensing a trend with you.
Assassin business.
I'm sensing a trend.
Yes, so it's really fun. I think they just started the second season on YouTube. It's all on YouTube. It's all free. Go look it up. Helluva Boss by Vivzy Pop. If you're into like adult cartoons, definitely for you.
Nice. Well, I think that's probably all that we're going to have time to get into today. I was going to ask you about Supernatural, but I feel like that's going to be one of those that you're going to go on for a long time about at this point.
I mean, if you were a Supernatural kid, you know, so shout out to those fellow Supernatural kids. How's the adult neurodivergence treating you?
Okay, can you repeat that one more time? You started cutting out there.
Oh, sorry. I said just shout out to those fellow Supernatural kids, and how's the adult neurodivergence treating you?
I see, okay. Anyway, so, hey, thank you for coming on today. That was pretty fun.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I am honored to be on the first one.
That's awesome. And so, yeah, thank you all, everyone, for listening. If you go into our show notes, right now I am trying to help fundraise to get a new laptop as my current computer is dying. So if you have a few bucks to spend, go to the Ko-Fi I have linked in the show notes. Spend there. We are on Twitter. We are on Mastodon. I just recently created an account there because Lord knows Elon Musk is completely ruining Twitter. I am on Substack where I post all my articles and podcasts, just nice and tidy, get it all in your inbox. And yeah, I got Instagram. Just check out the show notes for all that stuff. And thank you all for listening, everyone. Hope that you have a wonderful day, and peace.